What is happening, team? Welcome back for another episode of the Obstacle Dominator podcast. And in today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is the off season and really what it entails for me, what it should mean for you, like what we should actually be doing at this time of year, and what we should be avoiding, and also why it's an incredibly important part of our training. So we're going to look at what to do on planning for the year ahead and what events and what goals we should be having and focusing on to make sure that we're finding balance between like the stress of life and training and commitments and events and races or whatever you're doing, but also finding balance between that and actually having the rest and the recuperation in between that. Now I'm going to kickstart with a little bit of information on my story from like previous years, and then really loop that into what the off season means for me and what that actually entails. Now there's a great quote, and then basically this quote says, "The harder we try, the harder we fall." Okay, and I mentioned on a previous podcast episode, I think it was the running one that I've just done, about optimizing intensity. Okay, and making sure that we're setting conditions right now for longevity within our sport. Okay, and making sure that we're not going to burn ourselves out either mentally or physically, and make sure that we get into this consistent state where we can continually progress and progress, or progressions that we make aren't always linear. Things may not always work out in the way that we want, but the good thing about that is that allows us to recalibrate and go again. And really this time of year is a great time for really slowing down and allowing you to catch up on other aspects of life, and really cast vision to what lays ahead. Okay, so right now for me, I've had a week solid off training. I've moved a lot. Yeah, I've lifted, I've carried things, outside of the gym, more so around the house. Like I've walked, I've swam, got some sun. Like after the Trifecta World Championships, it was probably the hardest I've ever recovered because I'd done next to nothing on the Monday. Okay, just moved my body, jumped in the sea, got some sunlight, got some earth, ate some great food. Yeah, and that was exactly the same all the way through till Friday. So I had a good 4 to 5 days of rest and recovery. And that was like such a game changer for me. So my first question is like, when was the last time that you actually took time out physically from training, and therefore you took time out mentally without thinking about training and just nurturing yourself and moving your body? So just like ponder on that for a second. So really looking at this time of year or the last race or event that you're doing this year as the last thing you do in terms of training. Okay, I'm not saying all the way through till like January 1st, take time off, but certainly what I do is I take anywhere from like 1 to 4 weeks off after I've done those last major events, just as a full reset physically and mentally, not thinking about training, not doing any training, just moving my body. And the benefit of this is actually catching up on life, lowering stress, allowing the body to do its thing. And actually it's tied in quite nicely for me at this time of year because I'm doing quite a lot of traveling. I'm also in the mix of moving house again and locations. So there's lots going on. So actually not having to worry about doing an hour or 2 hours worth of training a day is actually like really cool. I don't have to wake up and think about nailing my nutrition and like being perfect with my sleep and making sure I'm fitting everything and cramming everything in, because that's not what I need right now. And if we think about the year that we've just had, I think I done my first race at the start of March. It's now November. This is like the best part of a year I've been racing. So if you're somebody that's sat at this time of the year and you haven't yet stopped, and you've got more races looming in the background across the rest of this month, December, January, the question you want to be asking yourself is like, when are you actually going to take time off? Because yet again, talking about longevity within the sport, how many years do you think you can continuously go for? And I look at a lot of people's training, not just the guys that I coach, but people in the wider world, and they don't take time off. They're consistently like hitting the same numbers without backing off, resting, tapering, deloading. And in most cases, they're looking to progress and increase that. That's great. Like your body may be able to handle it now, but where's that going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Yeah. So what I'm saying is if you want some longevity, take a good bit of time out. Yeah, it might seem bizarre to take 3 or 4 weeks off, but actually it's reinvigorating mentally and physically. Yeah. And it's a really powerful thing to do. But I understand what comes up for many people when we start taking time off or start thinking about taking time off as well. I'm going to lose all my gains. I'm going to lose all my fitness. But in reality, that's not the case. For the past 3 years, I've taken a minimum of, last year I took 3 weeks off. The year before that, I took 3 weeks off. I think the year before that, maybe I done 4, might have been 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. But every single year for the past few years, I've taken a good chunk of time off at this time of year to unwind, catch up, stop training for a little while. And here's a really fascinating thing as well. Like when I've gone back to training and I've done my assessments before I move into my next training block, every single year, the stats, my strength, my run times are better than the previous year. So like when I finished that previous year, like 12 months before, in comparison, all the metrics and markers are higher. So if you're thinking about it, well, I'm taking a month off, it's like, okay, you're not reversing anything. Actually, you're accelerating your progress because you're nurturing yourself. And when you do get back into training, actually the start point is higher than it ever was before. So you're not hitting reset and like taking steps backwards. Actually, the platform that you're launching from is higher than it ever was before. I remember last year, actually, at the end of my off season, doing like a strength assessment. I done the most amount of pull-ups that I've ever done. Yeah, and I hit like great speeds on run times. I think I set a personal best in one distance. Yeah, so it says a lot from just unwinding, taking time out. Like I said, it's not just for the physical body. It's also for the mindset. I'm actually speaking to one of the guys today. He's super pumped. Like he's already just taken a week off. And before we hopped on the call, he's basically sent over a list of here's my goals, here's my intentions. And it's like, wow, when we actually create some space to allow things to be processed, like i.e. the previous event, the past year, and then we cast vision forward, a lot of magic happens. And there was just such a fire in his belly. And he's only a week in, like 7 or 8 days into his off season of doing nothing. And he's catching up on other aspects of life. Stress is low. He's feeling really good. But by the end of this week, and when he gets back into training next Monday, he's going to feel fucking awesome. Yeah, because he's just had this reset. He's realigned himself with his goals. He's had a very successful season racing, and he's in the best possible position right now. And that's phenomenal. Yeah, and that's the place that we want to be operating from. And like talking about the previous episode I've done on running, a lot of the time we're like not consistent with our training because we think we've got to do this soul crushing workout, and then that leads to inconsistencies because a lot of the time the things that we think we need to be doing aren't actually the things that we should be doing. And often when we're looking at a precise workout or training block and it seems like hard or too hard, then there's not going to be consistency there. So it's not actually the compliance of the training program, it's more the compliance of not doing the training. So keeping an open mind as to what you're doing. Right. So yet again, this is another really important part of the off season, taking some time out to hit reset, to refresh and get yourself in a good place before there is another incredibly lengthy period of time ahead. For me, like I start in March, like middle of March. So looking at that now, it's like December, January, February. So we've got like 4.5 months before we're back out there. In the grand scheme of things, taking 2 to 3 weeks off isn't a massive chunk of time. And if anything, it's going to be very beneficial. And at the moment, I've got it in my head that I'm going to take 2 weeks off. Okay, I'm now 7 days into it. But actually I'm thinking maybe at the end of that 14-day period, I might want to take an additional week off. Okay. We want to get back to the point where we're literally like itching to get back to training. Yeah, we want to go out there and train. And that may be you after a few days. That may be after you for a week. If so, great, exploit that. But what I'm saying is we need to slow down. We need to take a little bit of time off, more than we actually need, because really this is where the magic happens, when we're rested, when we're recovered, when we're operating from a really great place. Okay. So looking at this this block of time and training period for the off season, and also speaking a bit more about my experiences as well, and looking back at like previous years, I think 2019, I think this was like my first like proper Spartan season. I'd done races before that, but this is when I really started like getting into it, and I was competing in age group. During that competitive season, I think I took somewhere in around like 19 weeks off, like before races, after races. So like deloading, tapering to really like prepare. And for those that know me closely and conversations that I had last weekend at Trifecta World Championships, know the protocol that I apply, and something that allows me to like perform really well. I applied that during those races, but like in a pretty lengthy season of like anywhere from like March all the way through till like December, that season was, I mean, that's like 9 months of the year there or thereabouts. It's a long time. But actually the reason my performance increased across that year, and I went from like top 15 performances all the way to consecutively hitting gold medals towards the end of that competitive season, was because I was fresh. Like I was in a good place, which allowed me to like continuously progress, where like a lot of the other athletes like faded. And I remember finishing like a couple of minutes before everyone else on the beast in my age group, which was the final race of that year. Ended up like getting like top 3 in the nation. So that was pretty cool. And I really like to this day put that down to being rested, being primed, being recovered to take on the load from the races and the intensity that they entail. Yeah. So there definitely is something to it. And this philosophy has been applied to every other year. I think there probably could have been some more consistency with training this year, but life events have happened, and that's what it is. I've been as consistent as possible, and I'll release a post on this either today or tomorrow, so you have a little bit more in the background about that. But really, things don't need to be perfect. Okay, but what we should be doing at this time of year is looking forward, okay, as well as looking back and evaluating. So they're the two things that I want you to do. Evaluate what has just happened and looking at your performance, and then based on that, looking at the year ahead. So what do you want to achieve? Like what is the goal for the year? Like who do you want to be? Where do you want to be standing? What do you have wanted or want to have achieved this time next year? Okay, so what is the goal? Okay, and then here's a really powerful thing that loads of us overlook, is what is the driving force? Like what is your why? Like why do you want to achieve that precise goal or these specific outcomes? Because a goal alone isn't the thing that gets results. Yeah, it's got to have a powerful reason why, but then also it's got to have the action steps and the process that takes you through the series of those process goals, those little incremental like habits and stepping stones to make that goal a reality. And that's really where a training program comes into play. Yeah, we're reverse engineering the whole process, learning from past success, past failures, looking at where we're currently at, looking at where we want to be 12 months from now, and then looking at the action steps and the process that will take us through to that ideal position. But also being flexible and adaptable to change and the curveballs life throws our way. Okay. Another thing here is like the season really starts now. Okay, this off-season period is the beginning of 2024's competitive season. So if you're somebody that's just taking time off or being willy-nilly with your training, that's the wrong approach. That's the wrong attitude. In fact, this is the best time to start training for 2024. And the people that put the work in for the next 3 to 6 months will be victorious next year. It's as simple as that, providing they've been consistent. Okay, and there's various things you can do, but you need to have a look at that bigger picture and where you want to be 12 months from now. But also you need to have a date, a race, an event put into your calendar, and you need to be committed to it so that that is the thing that you are training towards. So by putting all of these stops in place and by putting all these measures in place, you're solidifying your success. And all you need to do each and every day is stick to the game plan. But it's got to be simple. It's got to be sustainable for it to be effective. And yet again, this goes back into why it's a great reason to have structure, support, and accountability from coaching and a program, because a lot of the time we just go about things the wrong way. Yeah, and sometimes we need someone to rein us in. Why I have coaches, why I follow a program. Yeah, I'm very well informed and good at what I do, but yeah, we all need support, structure, and accountability so that we can focus on the execution. For the most part, a lot of us are very, very busy. We've got lots of things, lots of moving parts in the outside world. A great way to apply simplicity to all of that is to open up your phone, look at your calendar, and go and do that training session that's already been put on there for you, rather than trying to think about it all yourself. Yeah. And then that kind of falls into some of the stuff that I spoke on the last podcast, if you're not spoken about it. Okay. So if we think about it, what I'm talking about with like taking this time off and being prepared, like this is a very important pivotal part of your training. It allows you to reset, create space for you to think, and look forward to what is ahead. Okay. Now, if we look at it this way, if you took a month off, okay, so the top end, so if you take 4 weeks off after your last event, yeah, you've only taken a year off in 10 years, minus like weekends, odd days, and tapering, deloading, whatever. It's not a significant amount of time to actually give you more time in the game, rather than being really, really good for the next few years and then burning out, and that's it. Your performance drops. Okay, so focus on progress over this perfectionist approach, and that will set you up for far more success in the short term, but also the long term as well. Okay, so I'm going to speak about like the timing of this as well, and there's some really, really important aspects to timing the off season. I spoke to one of the guys, John, who's been on the podcast before. Personally coach him and have done for some time. He's been with Primal for, well, probably coming on 2.5, 3 years, and it's just like coming leaps and bounds of his training. But on a call we had the other day, he was talking about his off season, which we've like planned and programmed. He's actually got one more race. He's actually got a half marathon happening this Sunday. That's his last event for the year. We looked at the past couple of years and going, well, actually, like, probably the best time for you to take the off season is a little bit like before this or around this time, so that actually that ties in with life and work commitments. So there's less training, therefore I've got more time to focus on work projects that actually are quite time consuming. So it's giving himself leverage so he can focus on doing work in other aspects of life without having to think about this and creating undue stress. Yeah, and also looking at some of the other guys that have got travel plans around this time of year and got plans around Christmas. Okay, we don't just need to take this off-season time period, chunk of rest in one go. We could take 2 weeks here, a week here, right? We can be flexible and adaptable. And I know Christmas can be a big one, especially if it's traveling, seeing family. You want to train, but you can't train. I mean, there can be lots going on. But then we can beat ourselves up and we're like, oh crap, I haven't trained and I've overindulged. Well, if you've like scheduled that in to start with, it's not so much of an issue. And I never see it as being so much of an issue, yeah, with my own training, because it's who I am now. Like the things I do, the life I live is so ingrained in me. I don't have the fear of, oh, I'm going to slip off the wagon, I'm never going to train, or I ate a bad food and that's it. Everything's blowing, it's the end of everything. No, that's detrimental. And that's merely a way that we view things, when actually we can change that and change our point of view on everything: nutrition, training, lifestyle, social occasions, to actually being more of a positive thing where we're filling our cup back up versus working against ourselves. Okay. Also, like, the winter months can make it harder to train. And we're already seeing this, and I'm certainly hit by this. The days are shorter, the days are darker, it's colder, and it's certainly a lot wetter in the UK. Yeah, those factors make it incredibly hard to train. Okay, so also looking at like your training period, your training calendar of what you're doing. Yeah, having a look at the training load. Yeah, because we want to make all of this as appealing as possible so that we can be as consistent as possible. Okay. And then taking into consideration other people, commitments. Okay. So some pretty important stuff for you to consider. But I just really want to emphasize, take some time out. And secondly, don't feel bad for taking time out. Like, if you do it, like, you will feel awesome. It's very, very rewarding because you're just alleviating a lot of unnecessary stress. Another thing that's important as well, like what I put it on my calendar. I've like communicated to people when I'm taking this time off and said, well, I'm taking from here to here off, potentially from here to here off as well, due to travel, whatever. And already I feel better, but also people are more in the know because I've been effective in my communication, and it's a really beneficial thing. Okay. Because then other people see when you're going to be present and focused rather than, oh crap, got Christmas and, oh, I got to head out for my long run or whatever else, and then that ruffling some feathers. So what? It's one day. Yeah, you can catch up at a later date. Remember, you're in this for the long haul. Yeah, you're going to be doing this for many, many more years. So do it right. Have some fun, and make sure you're looking after yourself. Okay. So when it comes down to making a decision on if you're going to take a period of time off or when you're going to take some time off, really there's two options if you don't believe me on taking time out being beneficial. Like, you can just continue to train through and keep chasing and keep hitting those numbers and see where that takes you mentally and physically over the coming year and beyond. Or you can take some time out, see what happens, and I'd bet that you'd be pleasantly surprised and you'd be more willing to take more time out across the year and at this time of the year as well. Okay. So it's going to be beneficial by allowing you to relax, lower stress, catch up on things you've been meaning to do. You could even sleep in if time permits, take naps, which I know most people can't do, but if you're blessed with being able to work from home or you've got a flexible working schedule, you can do that. You can read, you can catch up with people. Yeah, you can cook amazing food. You can stay active just with unstructured, playful activity. You can work on building other habits and routines. And speaking to one of the other guys today, he's like, yeah, I'm not training, but I'm going to nail my nutrition. Yeah, that's it. So one simple focus. Yeah. Things that you shouldn't be doing during this time period as well. Like, we want to move away from, in the rest period, like doing any training really, and a hard one because this is a massive void because so much of our life revolves around being physically fit, active, and training. It's not thinking about training. Yeah, not doing any long training sessions or anything too intense. Yeah, eating junk food or eating too much food, staying up late and drinking alcohol. It's not like, well, I've got this additional time back, I'm gonna throw all my habits and routines out the window. No, it's not the done thing, and that's not going to serve you. Okay, so we don't throw everything out the window and like just like start eating donuts and crumbs out of belly button. Okay, that's not what we do because we don't want to like regress, but you're certainly going to take time off and not feel bad about doing it. For me, yesterday, because I'm moving house, it's just like tidying up, moving things, like move some stuff around the garden. Yeah, I was working on like some balance and carrying things just in a fun and playful way, and like spending time with my daughter and whatever else. Like, do stuff that like fills your cup up. Okay, and then when we're getting back to training, so right now, what we should have done is looked at when we're scheduling in off season, how long that's going to be, but being flexible and adaptable anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, could be more if you want. Second thing, you're going to want to reevaluate what you've done for the past year, the progress, the areas for improvement, write that down, journal on it, thoughts. Then you're going to want to look ahead, plan the events, the races, commit to them, and then look at what is the first one you need to train towards and how much time that you've got, and ultimately what the goal for that is and all the other ones are for. Okay. Now, when we get back to training, already we're starting at a higher point than we ever have previously if we've done things correctly. That doesn't mean we pick up training at the same height and the same level as we've done, because yet again, if we've got a 9-month competitive season, if you're training multiple times a day, 6 or 7 days a week, yet again, that's unsustainable. Yeah, it'd be better to do a slow build, ease back into it, and not go into the full swing. And also, your body's had a bit of time off. You don't want to just cause such a shock to it, because it's going to create soreness, and maybe it might not be the best thing to do. All right, so start with easy work. Instead of running, maybe like drop a couple of those training sessions and keep off the impact. Cycle, row, swim, do whatever you want. Yeah. Another option is you could reduce volume, the intensity or the duration of your session. So there's lots of things you can play about with and lots of variables, but what I'm saying is don't go from the starting point of where you were right back up to that. Take a training block or two to get back up to that. Okay, whether that's like a 2 to 3 week period, repeat it twice, but just spending some time getting back into that. Yeah, and do that over the coming months with all the key sessions, and this should just give you time to focus on weaknesses, imbalances, and what's really going to move the needle. Okay, and just looking at ways how you can be consistent. If the weather's crap, get on the treadmill inside. If the weather's crap, get on the bike. Yeah, if you're not feeling motivated because there's about 2 hours of sunlight a day, then like find some way to be consistent. That's going to be better than doing nothing. And also the excuses that can come with it as well. Like, I'll do it tomorrow, there'll be more time. As human beings, what we do is we push things into the future. We just buy ourselves a little bit more time in our comfort zone. But the reality of the situation is it's a bullshit story that we tell ourselves just to remain a little bit more comfortable for a little bit longer. Okay. So get started, get out the door, do what you need to do with no massive expectations. Okay. And a great trick that I do, okay, believe this or not, like sometimes I don't want to do training sessions, especially if they're longer, more intense. All I'll say to myself is just get out the door, just get your shoes on, just get to the end of the road. Yeah, just get your warm up in, just do the first K, just see how you feel. Okay, just do the first interval, just do this. All right. And before you know it, like you're halfway through that workout and you're like, I'm feeling really good. All right. But it's just that inner bitch, that negative voice inside our head trying to beat us down, trying to keep us comfortable. And it's self-sabotage. Like we've all got it within us. We want to remain comfortable. That is the way we're wired, but we can turn that on its head by just getting our foot in the door. And often the hardest part is getting started. And if we've got a massive mammoth task ahead of us, that can be quite deterring. So start small and then ease yourself into it. Okay, so we're going to talk about some pitfalls and things that you can do right now in consideration to planning the year ahead, and also your season goals. And if you want these, just drop me a message. I mean, there'll be open Q&A at the bottom of this podcast that you can interact with. But if you want these bullet points, these notes that I've written down, I'm going to go through, then just ask. All right. And equally, if you've got any questions specific to you, put them at the bottom of the podcast. I'll get through them and answer those questions as well. Okay. So planning the year and season goals, starting off with common pitfalls. Number one, or the first bullet point, is being unrealistic. Okay, so being unrealistic with the goal of the season and what you want to achieve. Now, clearly we need to set the bar high. It's better to set the bar high and fall short than to not take the shots in the first place, because yet again, we just remain comfortable. Okay, but don't be unrealistic. Don't say you want to be world champion elite racer in the first year, because there's people with 10, 15 years experience. Okay, be realistic. It's you versus you. Another one is too many races in the season. Okay, overcommitting to races. Okay, this just leads to a lot of inconsistencies. Yeah, because you're constantly preparing to race, backing off, and then there's a big chunk of time that you need to recover. So it's like not only too many races in the season, that's too many races close together or races on the same weekend. Yeah, and then not determining your focus is for those races. So what is an actual competitive race and a race that you want to go in and perform and do well, either to score points or win medals or whatever it may be. And what is a B race? What is a training race? But then also being okay with that. There's been races this season where I've gone in and they've been training races. Yeah, and I know full well I'm not going to perform very well. Yeah, but you have to be okay with that. Yeah, Mallorca at the start of the year went into that fatigue, didn't taper. I had, I think, a 2 or 3 week training block, 2 week training block before that, and went into that with heavy legs. I come top 25 or something like that in the elite. I was okay with that. I knew that that was going to happen. I've done fell races, I've done other Spartan races, other OCR this year that have not been A races. I've gone into them fatigued because they are not part of my season goal. They are there as a training race. So it's identifying what races you're going to do, what your intentions for that race are, what is, and what you want to get out of that. Okay, another pitfall is not being sure on the focus or the season goal. This feeds back into what I've just said. Yeah. What is the aim? What is the goal? What is your why? Also, if you don't know where you are in comparison to previous, it's probably because you're not tracking things. So first and foremost, not assessing where you are with baseline values of fitness and having those metrics as a marker for future assessments so you can look back and progress. And we're massive on this here at Primal. Yeah, when people come in, we assess. We then progress, we then reassess. Okay, and people that have been working with us for years, they can see where they were when they first come in to where they are now and everything in between. And that data is valuable. So if you don't have that, you need to get that. Otherwise, progress or like any variables or any like trends or anything that's not working in a way that it should be can't be addressed because it's not been assessed on that front. Another pitfall as well is not like being well informed of like why and how you're doing training. So something we do is tailored programs that are specific to the goal and the races that you're working towards, which is massively important. Yeah. Otherwise, you're training without an aim. We spoke a minute ago about like having the goal, but a goal alone doesn't get results. It's actually the process that gets you to the results and outcomes you want. But then you've got to be realistic with that at the same time and be adaptable to how the body responds and the variables and the curveball life throws our way. And then another one is not taking time off, but not only not taking time off for when we skip training sessions or can't hit training sessions or can't hit them to the capacity or the degree that we want to, is we beat ourselves up and we see ourselves as failing. But the reality of the situation is that's not the case. Like it's just that inner bitch is that voice, like Xing out our potential and beating us down. Yeah, and we've got such a tendency to hit that big red button if things aren't perfect and implode and destroy everything else in our path, when actually that is just a single attribute or aspect of what you do. And just because you've not been able to train that day in the way that you want or hit the numbers or it wasn't a perfect session or you had to cut it short, we think, well, fuck it, I'm going to eat shit. And then I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to scroll on social media. Yeah, which means I get lousy sleep. So that's the thing that puts us out. That's the thing that sabotages our success, not the move training session. It's the way that we view things and the way that we react when they actually happen, rather than what I do and what the guys I do that work with me and the team is go, so what? On to the next. Yeah, I ate that bit of ice cream, I ate that cheesecake. So what? I've not packed on a ton of weight. Yeah, feel all right, or I don't feel so good. When's the next opportunity I can get back on that? Or when it comes to training, okay, that didn't go so well. Great. That's given me some feedback on what to do differently next time. Or I didn't get to sleep on time or scrolling social media. Okay. What was the lessons learned from that? Well, I woke up pretty tired, threw my nutrition out of whack the following day, ate a ton of sugar. Yeah, felt really lousy all day. Then I skipped training because I didn't have the energy, didn't have the time. So often it's what we do and what we don't do that affects us in the way that we view it. So we need to make sure that we take time out to keep us in the game. Okay, so things to do right now. By all means, pause this, use this as a bit of active implementation. This is certainly something we do on our coaching calls. So things to do right now. Okay, pause this if you need to. Write down your season goal or goals. Like, where do you want to be at the end of this competitive season? Now, once you've got them written down, write all the events that you want to do, place them on a calendar, whether that's a Google Calendar, an actual like physical calendar, put them on paper. Okay, starting with the one furthest out, working towards the one that's closest to you. Another consideration is, like, before your first A race, your main event, consider a pre-season race. Like I said, like I do Mallorca. We're actually doing a training camp out there this year. Well, a large number of guys from Primal are going to that, and we may open up doors to people that are not part of the community to come and like experience some of our training and just hang out with us and yeah, spend some time in the sun. But look at what the goal is for you. Okay, like I will probably work towards a road race before Mallorca, yeah, just to work on some speed. Yeah, so look at that, and then look at your season goals. Also look at areas that you need to change based on past experiences in regards to overcommitting to events, doing too much too frequently, yeah, which leads to inconsistencies. So once you've put everything on the calendar, look at what's realistic. Look at what you can reduce in terms of events. Now you've got all that information, have a look at the A races, the competitive races, and then have a look at like the B races, which would be more like training races. Okay. But then also like remind yourself, like the B races, you're there to like compete and perform, but you're probably going to be doing this on fatigued legs and you probably won't be in the best position. Okay. But you have to be okay with that. Yeah. Remember, it's you versus you. All right. And yeah, communicate that with other people if that's the case, so that when you're on the start line or finishing in a place that you don't normally, then people understand that. Okay, big part, commitment. So once you've got all this information down, book the races, get it in the diary, commit. Another great thing is announce your intentions in public, announce your goals in public for accountability. I use social media. The guys use social media. We use our platform school where our community is. Yeah. That level of public accountability and coaching accountability is phenomenal. Okay. And then look at your current training plan. If you've got one, if you haven't, get one. And ask yourself, is it realistic? Is it sustainable? Is it specific to me and my goals and direction that I'm going that's going to allow me to progress towards the performance breakthroughs that I want for this year? And then also look at where you're going to take the next 1 to 4 weeks off to do all this work and get everything in place and set conditions by resting and recovering before you return. And then the final one here is like, what assessments are you going to do? What are you going to carry out to give you metrics, markers that you can look at to assess your training where it is, and also progress it from where it is. Cool. So there's some considerations. Obviously, pause this, go back, go over them. But I'll be honest with you, like you could just listen to this and not take any action, not do anything. Or you could carve out some time, maybe an hour of your day in your evening when you could be scrolling social media, binging something. Or hey, if you're actually listening to this, you would have seen this on my story on my social media. So why don't you pause this right now and go back into these questions? Could be useful, because yeah, information alone doesn't get results, doesn't get us the outcomes we want. It's actually action that gets us there. Okay, so carve out some time for some implementation. Okay, final few points. And this is a really, really good way for assessing where we are and how to know if you have or haven't taken enough time out for your off season in that initial period once you finish your first race, or sorry, last race. So I got pretty beat up in the last race that I done. I had like a bunch of cuts and bruises, which after a week have healed pretty well. But for the most part, the ones on my back and my shoulders are probably about, I don't know, maybe 80-90% healed. Definitely some discoloration on the skin from like scratches and cuts, but for the most part, they're gone. However, I've got like a rope burn on the front of my shin, in and among some other like little scrapes and cuts that are probably only about 50% of the way healed. So why am I explaining this? Well, if you haven't taken enough time out, then your body's not going to be fully healed. So these cuts and scrapes are on the surface of the body. Yeah. What lies beneath that is your connective tissue, your muscles, your joint health, all these sorts of things, stuff that we can't see with the naked eye. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all healed after a week. So yet again, this is another good reason to actually take some time out. Yeah. And you could actually like use your cuts and bruises as a sign or as a signal to say how well recovered and quickly you heal and respond back from that. Yeah, and there's different things you can do to accelerate the recovery, whether it's nutrition, sleep, all that sort of stuff. But I know for me, I'm using it as a visual aid, a physical marker to know when I get back into it. Because if my cuts and scrapes and bruises have all healed, then typically everything else is healed. Yeah, I didn't actively go out and beat myself up on that last race, but if you've got cuts and bruises and things like that, if they've disappeared, then you could pretty much count that the rest of your body is healed. And that goes with like aches and pains. Are they still present? Have they gone away? Yeah, and then that feeds into levels of motivation, feeling motivated to train, getting that fire back in your belly. And that's really a good sign. Like when you are like actively like pumped to like get back out and go and train, that's where you want to be. Versus at the point where I'm at now, it's like, now I want to take another week off. Potentially I'll take another 2 weeks off. That says to me that I'm not ready to get back into training yet. And actually it would be counterproductive for me this year to do that, to continue to train through, versus actually getting to a point where I'm like, I cannot wait to go and train. Like I'm excited for this training session. Like you're going to put more into it rather than going through the motions. All right. That is a little bit of chat on the off season. Like I said, if you've got any questions, then drop them below this podcast or just message me directly on social media. But really just have a look at what you can do. Yeah, what you can do to really optimize your training by slowing down, assessing where you're at so that you can progress furthermore. Probably a ton of other things that I could have talked about, but I hope this has all been useful. But for those of you that have stood at this pivotal point of the year and not really knowing where to go, where to turn, what to do, then there's support out there. Like I'd more than happily have a conversation with you to explore options in terms of like helping you with creating some structure and getting you some support and accountability so that you can continually progress with your training and boost your performance, like many of the other guys that you see within the community, the guys that are like consistently hitting podiums or consistently making progress with their lifestyle, their body composition, okay, and much more. All right, just know that there's support out there that can help you. And if we're the guys for you, then by all means drop us a message. If not, at least we can do is like point you in the right direction. But I hope you took some value from this, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next podcast. Cheers.